Have you ever thought of someone you haven't seen in years, only for them to call minutes later? Or heard a song answer a question you've been asking all day? Found what you needed without even looking for it? Science calls these coincidences. Materialism dismisses them as random noise. But visionaries like Carl Jung and Nobel laureate Wolfgang Pauli saw something deeper, a hidden syntax in reality's chaos. So, why do we ignore these moments? And what happens when we stop ignoring? To understand why we dismiss life's whispers, we need to confront reductionism, a worldview born in the 17th century that reshaped humanity's relationship with reality. It began with Descartes splitting mind from body, declaring, "I think, therefore I am." Newton followed, reducing the cosmos to equations. Factories soon turned forests into lumber, rivers into power, and humans into replaceable parts. For 300 years, this approach worked. Smallpox was eradicated, cities soared, we touched the moon. But in our quest to dissect the world, we lost sight of something vital, the language of connection. The first crack appeared in 1927, when Werner Heisenberg proved a radical idea. Electrons behave differently when observed. His uncertainty principle shattered the illusion of detached objectivity. The universe, it seemed, wasn't a passive machine. It responded to our gaze. Decades later, deep in Canada's forests, ecologist Suzanne Simard uncovered another flaw. Trees, she found, weren't solitary competitors. Through vast underground fungal networks, they traded nutrients, warned of disease, and nurtured seedlings. Forests, she realized, were communities, not collections of parts. Then, in 2013, neuroscientist Anil Seth flipped the script on perception. Your brain, he argued, isn't a camera recording reality. It's a storyteller, weaving raw data into narratives. When you see a sunset or hear a laugh, you're not observing, you're co-creating. Reductionism's greatest flaw wasn't its rigor, it was its loneliness. It trained us to see ourselves as isolated minds adrift in a dead and mechanical universe. We forgot how to read the patterns whispering through our lives, the friend's call after decades of silence, the song that answers an unspoken question. As Jung warned, the more we worship rationality, the more we impoverish life. We become strangers in a world begging to be heard. In 1930, Wolfgang Pauli, the physicist Einstein called him the conscience of quantum mechanics, reached a breaking point, haunted by vivid dreams of world clocks and mathematical equations that bled into his waking life. He turned to an unlikely ally, Carl Jung, the psychiatrist probing humanity's deepest symbols. For years, the two met at Zurich's Café Odeon, bridging physics and psychology. Their collaboration gave birth to a radical idea: synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that defy cause and effect, linking inner experience to outer reality. Jung's most famous case involved a patient trapped in rigid rationality. She dreamed of a golden scarab, an ancient symbol of rebirth. During their session, a real scarab, a species unseen in Switzerland, tapped at the window. For Jung, this wasn't magic. It was evidence of unus mundus, Latin for one world, where mind and matter merge. Pauli, meanwhile, saw parallels in quantum physics. He noted that electrons entangled across vast distances communicate instantly, defying Einstein's cosmic speed limit. Jung argued synchronicity worked similarly, meaningful patterns transcending time and space. Critics dismissed their work as pseudoscience, but Jung and Pauli fought back with evidence. Pauli spent years documenting over 300 of his own dreams, discovering eerie parallels to quantum principles like wave-particle duality. In one dream, he saw equations that later mirrored Heisenberg's groundbreaking work. Jung, meanwhile, traveled the globe collecting myths and symbols. He noticed mandalas, sacred circles representing cosmic unity, appearing not only in Tibetan monasteries, but also in the orbital diagrams of early atomic models. To Jung, this wasn't coincidence. It was proof of archetypes, universal patterns etched into humanity's collective psyche. By 1952, they published The Interpretation of Nature and the Psyche, arguing synchronicity wasn't mystical. It was a scientific hypothesis ahead of its time. As Pauli wrote, "The rational alone cannot grasp reality. We need a language that unites the measurable and the meaningful." Today, science is catching up. In 2019, MIT neuroscientists published a study on the brain's predictive coding system, the same mechanism that lets you recognize a friend's voice in a crowded cafe before you even see them. This process, they found, relies on the brain constantly generating predictions about the world, filtering chaos into patterns. Jung called this the collective unconscious, a shared repository of symbolic knowledge. The MIT team stopped short of endorsing mysticism, but their findings echoed Jung's core idea. The mind is wired to seek meaning in the noise. Meanwhile, at the University of Surrey, quantum biologist John Joe McFadden proposed in the early 2000s that entangled electrons within our neurons might explain intuition, those inexplicable gut feelings that guide decisions faster than logic. McFadden's hypothesis remains controversial, but it revives Pauli's old question. Could quantum physics hold the key to life's unspoken connections? In an age of climate collapse, algorithmic isolation, and existential numbness, synchronicity isn't a mystical curiosity. It's a survival tool. Take mental health. A 2020 study led by psychologist Clara Park found that people who notice meaningful coincidences report 23% lower anxiety levels. Why? Because recognizing patterns in chaos restores agency. A song lyric that answers a private struggle, a stranger's advice that mirrors a recurring dream, these moments whisper, "You're not alone in the storm." Then there's creativity. David Bowie, the genre-defying artist, once described his songwriting process as plucking ideas from the air, crediting chance encounters for his most iconic lyrics. Frida Kahlo, the iconic surrealist painter, channeled her near-fatal bus accident into visceral self-portraits, calling the crash a synchronistic rupture that unlocked her art. Even Albert Einstein, who famously said his theory of relativity began with a daydream, admitted, "I thought of it while riding a light beam." But synchronicity's deepest lesson lies in ecology. For decades, industrialized farming treated soil as a passive resource until droughts and crop failures forced a reckoning. Meanwhile, indigenous communities like the Kogi of Colombia read weather shifts through animal behavior, sustaining biodiversity for millennia. Suzanne Simard's discovery of the Wood Wide Web, vast underground fungal networks, proved trees communicate, sharing nutrients and warnings like neighbors whispering over a fence. The common thread? Synchronicity dissolves the illusion of separation. It reminds us that a thought in your mind, a quark in a lab, and a raindrop in the Amazon are threads in the same tapestry. Ignore these connections, and we spiral into alienation. Embrace them, and we rediscover what the Hopi elders called koyaanisqatsi, a warning of environmental collapse when humans exploit nature, and how to restore balance through reciprocity. This isn't about manifesting desires or divine signs. It's about humility. When a CEO heeds a gut feeling to pivot their company towards sustainability, that's synchronicity. When a nurse remembers her grandmother's herbal remedy just as antibiotics fail, that's synchronicity. When you stumble on a book that reshapes your life exactly when you need it, that's the universe's oldest language. As Jung warned, We are not trapped in the universe. We are the universe. The choice is stark. Keep reducing reality to fragments, or start listening to its whispers. It's okay to feel stuck between what you feel and what you've been taught. To question those moments that stop you mid-step, like thinking of an old friend seconds before they text, or finally discovering an answer to a lifelong question in a random line of a library book you picked on a whim. Science taught you to doubt coincidences, and that's fair. But synchronicity isn't about magic, it's about noticing. You don't have to believe in fate. Just ask, why does life sometimes feel like it's nudging me? A delayed train leads to a conversation that reshapes your perspective. A grieving son overhears his father's favorite joke from a street performer on the anniversary of his death. These moments don't need a label. They just ask you to pause, not to abandon logic, but to wonder if the universe may not be as indifferent as you were taught. If this video left you curious about the connections between your inner world and the larger reality we inhabit, support us by subscribing. Next, we'll dive into the roots of modern loneliness, why so many of us feel alone in a crowded world, disconnected from the threads that bind life together, and explore how to rebuild a sense of belonging. Join us as we examine what it truly means to feel connected to others, to nature, and to ourselves.